Hey, good morning, everyone. Happy Tuesday morning, and welcome back to Morning Musings. My name is Don K. Preston. I'm the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma. And here we are, and this is video something like 711 on the Olivet Discourse that we've been covering. And look, we have covered a ton of material. And oh, by the way, some of you contacted me privately. Let me see here if I can do this. No, here we are. This is a scale model of my 69 Mach 1 428 Cobra Jet car. This car was in a garage fire at my house some 17 years ago. Absolutely 100% rust-free, original paint, original interior. And my best friend and I had just nestled a brand spanking new motor down into it. He got an emergency heat and air call, had to leave, and so we just left everything as it was, and the next day I had a garage fire. Well, I can tell you that the 69 and the 70 Mustangs are really expensive to work on. So it's taken me the last 17 years, to save and to gather the parts and this and that and the other. It's just been a real struggle. But nonetheless, I am making progress, and some of you wanted to, ask me questions about the car. This color is not absolutely like my car, but it's pretty close. Tahoe turquoise is the real color, and I want to tell you, it's gorgeous. I had it painted, and the guy did a fantastic job. I knew he would, but anyway, that's a little bit of what my car is like. If I ever get it done, it's going to be awesome. I already have a rebuilt motor. I already have a rebuilt transmission that I had at the time of the fire. It'll have to be going back through and, freshened up. So anyway, yesterday I promised you I'm going to share something that is absolutely mind-blowing. At least it is to me. When I discovered these connections, you know me, I like to connect the dots, all right? When I connected these dots, I wrote about them in my book, Who is This Babylon? Now, I'm not going to be able to cover every single thing that I wrote about in this book, all right? So if you want to read more than I'm going to be able to share with you here about the connections that I'm going to make today, then go to my website and order the book, Who is This Babylon? And make mention that you saw the offer on YouTube or Facebook, and I'll refund your shipping, okay? And that will save you $5. So take advantage of it. I just want you to know I have a whole lot more of the discussion that I'm going to begin today in that book. So I have shared with you that Isaiah chapters 2 through 4 serve as a tremendous source, a prophetic source for the New Testament writers. I mean, it's alluded to, it's cited, it's echoed over and over and over, all right? I've already shared with you that Jesus, in Luke chapter 21, verse 24, has a direct echo of Isaiah 3:24. And there are other echoes, okay? What I want to do today is to begin to show you a little bit closer, a little bit more graphically, a little bit more explicitly, what Isaiah 2 through 4 says about this last day of the Lord that is predicted. All right? Now, this is going to be somewhat repetitious. I'm not going to apologize for that. For those who have not viewed the previous videos, this will be necessary. For those of you who have viewed the previous videos, perhaps some new nugget will jump out to help tie things together even more. So in Isaiah chapter 2, verse 2, we have the temporal context set for us. It shall come to pass in the last days. Now, what are the last days? Well, the last days, the terminology of the last days can refer to simply a latter time. It could also be eschatological in its reference. And this is clearly eschatological because in these last days that it's talking about, it is a time in which the Messianic temple would be established and all nations would flow into Zion. Well, guess what? That didn't happen at any other time other than the time of Jesus and in the New Testament, in which the Messianic temple, the spiritual temple of God, was being built. Ephesians chapter 2, 19 and following. In fulfillment of the Old Testament prophecies that said the time was coming in which the foreigners, the allotrios, the strangers and foreigners, those not of the tribes of Israel, they are the allogenes, they're not of the tribes. They would come and they would be given a name better than sons and daughters, and they would be welcomed into the Messianic temple. And they would find salvation. So, this is an eschatological reference. And when we come to the New Testament, we find that Jesus appeared in the last days. Point number 2, Jesus tells us, Matthew chapter 13, 17 and following, pardon me, in telling the parables to his apostles, Jesus said, many prophets and wise men have desired to see the things which you see, and to hear the things which you hear, and have not heard them. The things that even the angels desired to look into, which is kind of an interesting phrase, is it not? But nonetheless, Jesus was stating in the most emphatic way possible that what the Old Testament prophets foretold for the last days, those messianic prophecies that were not fulfilled in their days, the apostles and that first century generation was seeing the fulfillment of those prophecies. That is absolutely critical. So once again, keep in mind that Jesus appeared in the last days. Peter, on the day of Pentecost, said the last days foretold by Joel were present. Peter, in 1 Peter chapter 1, 19 and 20, said Christ was manifested in, quote, these last days or last times, unquote. So there's no question that the times foretold by Isaiah had arrived. There's no question that the Messianic temple foretold by Isaiah was in the process of being fulfilled. So, with that ever so brief background of Isaiah chapter 2, and we will get into more of it as we progress, but I want you to notice that the Lord said, out of Zion shall go forth the law. Well, that happened both physically and metaphorically or spiritually, because the apostles were present in literal physical Zion on the day of Pentecost when they began to preach the new covenant. But it was also true metaphorically and spiritually, because spiritual Zion was the real source of the new covenant. And thus the writer of Hebrews could say in Hebrews chapter 12, you have come to the heavenly Jerusalem. You have come to Mount Zion. You have come to the church of the living God. So, both literally and metaphorically and spiritually, the prophecy of Isaiah chapter 2 was being fulfilled in the first century in the proclamation of the new covenant beginning on Pentecost from literal Zion, and then it went forth into all of the world from heavenly Zion. Now, in Isaiah chapter 2, the Lord foretold a last days day of the Lord. As a result of Israel's sin. Now, some people try to say, well, the sin that he's talking about is idolatry. Well, the New Testament writers pretty well accuse Israel of their day of idolatry. They don't use that specific word, but they do accuse them of turning the temple into an idol. Jesus himself did that. Matthew 23, Stephen in Acts chapter 7. Anyway, as a result of Israel's sin, in these last days, the Lord said, enter into the rock, hide in the dust. Now watch this. Catch the power of this. From the terror of the Lord and the glory of his majesty. The lofty looks of men shall be humbled. The haughtiness of men shall be bowed down. And the Lord alone shall be exalted in that day. Now, this serves, that statement, the Lord alone shall be exalted in that day, points us directly to Zechariah chapter 14. That in the day of the Lord, the time of the judgment of Jerusalem, when the city would be taken, the women ravished, nonetheless, guess what? A river of living water shall flow from the city, from the temple. And it shall flow some to the hinder sea, some to the former sea. And it shall be for healing. Now watch this. And in that day, the Lord shall be one. And by the way, that's 1 Corinthians 15:28. The day of the resurrection. The day of the river of life flowing. So Isaiah chapter 2 is serving as a springboard, as a fountain for later prophecies of the day of the Lord and the resurrection. But I have to go on. Okay. Verse 12. For the day of the Lord of hosts shall come upon everything proud and lofty, and upon everything lifted up, and it shall be brought low. Upon all the cedars of Lebanon that are high and lifted up, and upon all the oaks of Bashan. By the way, some of the ancient rabbis took this language right here, upon all the cedars of Lebanon that are high and lifted up, and upon the oaks of Bashan. They took that as a reference to the destruction of the temple. Why? Well, because Lebanon and Bashan were the source of the cedars and the oaks that were used in the construction of the temple. So by metonymy, the rabbis understood the prediction of the destruction of the cedars and the oaks was in fact a prediction of the destruction of Jerusalem. We find the same thing in Micah chapter 3. Okay, so here we have a prediction of the day of the Lord. The day of the Lord, when men would do what? They would enter into the rocks. They would hide in the dust. It's all metaphorical language, obviously. How do you hide in the dust? Okay? From the terror of the Lord and the glory of his majesty. Day of the Lord, when men could run to the mountains, to the rocks, to the caves. Hang on to that thought. We'll develop it more. We'll develop it more on the flip side. I'll see you there.